Okay, this week at the agenda saw higher education striving to stay relevant, Egypt finding its footing, and how culture influences aging. The agenda's Week in Review begins with the big move. You guys released the big move about 5 years ago. What are you proposing?
So it's a 25-year, $50 billion plan, and it's all about providing more choices across the region. It's tripling the amount of rapid transit, it's doubling our transit modal share, and we've already started. We've got about $16 billion worth of projects, everything from the Spadina subway extension to light rail transit. And what we're now talking about is the next wave. How do we keep building more and more transit and transportation infrastructure, because we're growing by 100,000 people every year in this region.
You are $16 billion into a $50 billion plan. Can you get to where you want to go under the status quo?
Well, that's really what the investment strategy is all about. And the legislation sets out that we have to provide a report to the province and municipalities no later than June the 1st. And it's to set out the kinds of tools that we think are the right tools to continue to invest in transit and transportation. It's basically putting us in the same playing field as places like Vancouver, Montreal, and Chicago, and London, where they have investment tools that are dedicated and they provide a sustained investment into the system.
It's almost half the province living in that little red area. Why do we need to implement the big move?
Simply put, it's costing our regional economy in the GTHA area $6 billion a year. That's on an annual basis. Lost jobs, lost investment, lost productivity. So we are losing that on an annual basis, projected to rise to $15 billion by 2031. So it may cost us $2 billion a year right now to build out what Bruce has described in terms of a 25-year plan, $50 billion, but the cost of not doing it is multiples of that. So we've got to get on with it. We all know our own personal and professional experiences around it. It's critical. It's reached a crisis level.
I think the public needs to be confronted with the issue. And in the United States, when cities are doing LRTs, they go to referendum, they put it on the ballot, and they say, do you want to extend the Virginia Beach LRT another 10 miles, and will you pay 0.5% increase in your sales tax?
Do we need to do that here?
79% of the American cities that have done that in the last 10 years, they've said yes. So I don't think you should discount the public's willingness to engage in this, but I'm nervous about moving past that and saying, here's what we're doing, and I hope you like it.
John Henry, do we need a referendum on this in order to really get the public on board?
Well, to get the public on side, it would be interesting, but for us here too, we have the other problem. Because transit's only one part and we suffer with congestion, but we have the end of the pipe scenario. We have the aging infrastructure within our communities, we've got the life cycle of our buildings that need to be maintained and our roads. There's a bigger issue than just transit here too. Well, transit's a problem. We've got all these other issues that we as mayors of municipalities have to deal with.
Okay, I hear you, but on his issue of the referendum, are you for that?
You know what, I would support that as a question, sure.
Steve Parrish, yes to a referendum?
I don't think you're going to need one, because I think you're going to have a referendum called the provincial election, and I think you've got a Premier Wynne who today, you were there, said very clearly, I want to be the champion of this. I believe in this. I believe we need to do this, and I'm prepared to do what's necessary. And you've got the leader of the opposition, Mr. Hudak, saying no taxes, and you've got the leader of the NDP saying no taxes. So, and Premier Wynne has said, you want to have an election over this issue? Let's do it. So you know what, before we get to a referendum, I think you might have a provincial election where in the greater GTA and Hamilton, Greater Golden Horseshoe, this will be a central election issue, and the people will decide. And the people will vote for Mr. Hudak's party because they don't want taxes, or they're going to vote for Premier Wynne and her party because they do. I think that's the nearest referendum we're going to have.
Referendum?
I would say that it has to be bigger than the GTH or HA. It has to go outside of that, because there is no way that you can have increased fuel taxes just in the GTHA and sales tax just in the GTHA. I think it will harm our businesses, it'll harm everyone, and then what happens to all those people who don't live in that area and are driving through?
If we go back to federal politics in 2008, the Liberals had a new leader in Stéphane Dion. He brought out this green shift, which a lot of people said on policy was a good idea, but he couldn't sell it, and he got clubbed. I mean, the opposition had a field day demonizing him with it. Are there any lessons for the Wynne government in that?
Yeah, I think the first lesson is don't bring Stéphane Dion in to sell road tolls because you'll get clobbered. The second lesson is don't bring in Stephen Harper in as the antagonist to cut down road tolls because you'll also get clobbered with negative advertising. So let's set the table. It'll be Kathleen Wynne, with or without a honeymoon, against Tim Hudak and Andrew Horvath, who will have some arms in their quiver. Look, the carbon tax was a loser because people say they care about the environment, but not that deeply, and certainly not enough to pay for it. People don't care about transit either, by the way. That's the dirty little secret. They don't. They say they do, but they don't really care a lot. What they do care about is gridlock. And that's why you have this bizarre coalition of business and progressive voices and politicians from all over the map saying, this just doesn't work. We need to have some kind of a price signal and some kind of a dedicated revenue that will pay for this directly. And that's the difference with the carbon shift, which was, by the way, revenue neutral. It wasn't going to actually raise money. It wasn't in many ways a tax grab, but it was painted that way. This is a tax grab to pay for something concrete that will actually help the economy.
Any lessons?
Well, I don't think you were fishing too much because I wrote a column that raised this possibility of
Might be where similar. I got the idea.
Hopefully. I think Martin's right. I mean, in part, look, Kathleen Wynne is not Stéphane Dion. She is probably a better salesperson. That'll help. It is also a more tangible problem. That being said, I do think there's one lesson at least, which is that you can't let your opponents define the ideas before you define them yourself. That happened certainly to Stéphane Dion. He never really explained what the carbon tax was in a way that people understood, and Stephen Harper did it for him. The danger here a little bit for the government is that there are a whole bunch of options out there right now. They're taking their time a little bit in deciding which one to go with. In the meanwhile, it certainly should be possible if an opposition party wants to be a little bit cynical about it and opportunistic, to try and define for them what they're going to do, to raise the worst possibilities, to figure out how best to sell that. So that is the danger, is that the longer the government takes to zero in on something and sell it, the more opposition will do it for them.
The U.S. demand for oil is declining over time, and so the importance of Keystone in a sense will reduce over time if alternate means can be found to get Canada's oil to world markets. But in theory, of course, we'd like to be an integrated market with the United States. They're the closest, the transport costs would be the least, the access to refineries would be the nearest and simplest way to go. You'd like to have more integration of market integration rather than less.
David Collier, same question to you.
I think very much the same comment. We've had for a long time a very strong energy trading relationship with the United States. We've got a project in front of us that is the next manifestation of that. I think on its merits, it's very clear it should be approved, and I think it would be a rather disappointing and I think negative, frankly. It would have a negative impact on the Canada-U.S. trading relationship in the event that it were not approved. We are optimistic it will be. Does that mean Canadian oil won't go to market? No. Does it mean that the United States won't continue to consume oil? No. This is about where the U.S. sources its oil. We think it makes all kinds of sense to continue to source oil from Canada. And on that basis, the Keystone project should be approved.
Let's go east. David Sawyer, your view.
Yeah, I agree with the comments. I think you have to think of Canada as an energy warehouse, and it's not just about oil and gas. You know, the Canada-U.S. energy relationship goes back a long way and is, involves a diverse, group of products, energy products. So you think about hydropower. I mean, there are major issues in the U.S., ongoing issues with the U.S. around hydropower and energy exports there. So, yes, Keystone's an important and very, very visible sort of indicator of the state of the relationship. But it goes, so much more beyond just Keystone. And whether project approval happens or not, that long and deep energy relationship will continue.
Keith Stewart.
The basic principle here should be don't make a problem worse. And if we are going to do what scientists say is necessary to avoid dangerous levels of global warming, we need to stop building new fossil fuel infrastructure like Keystone and the expansion of the tar sands that it would enable, because the tar sands can't get much bigger without new pipelines. And we need to invest instead in renewable energy alternatives, in energy efficiency. As was noted, demand for oil is dropping in the US, it's dropping in Canada, it's dropping throughout the developed world. We need to start driving that down everywhere. And that means, not spending the more than $150 billion that's sort of estimated to expand the tar sands or been proposed on building infrastructure that's going to be around for 40 or 50 years, and instead invest in different things. So we think turning down Keystone is one decision. It's an important decision, and it's got to be sort of like the next step that we take in that direction, but we need to move our energy strategy towards low carbon, no carbon alternatives, and not into really carbon intensive fossil fuels.
Do you think it would be a problem in terms of diplomatic relations between Canada and the United States if there were either a no on Keystone, or if protesters blockaded or something like that?
Oh, I absolutely do. I mean, I have to say, I was really fascinated last week when Premier Redford made that speech at the Brookings Institution in a very public way. I'll tell you why. You know, when Ken and I worked together a year or so ago at American Enterprise Institute in Washington, every time we tried to put together a panel on the Keystone Pipeline, we'd call over the Canadian Embassy. And not only did they not want to put anyone on a panel, quite properly so, they didn't want to be mucking around in American domestic politics in an election year, but they were even reluctant to show up and watch the panel. And so this really shows to me an about face. And, you know, I mean, Canadians, understandably, with good reason, think, you know, we Americans, you know, with sharp elbows, you know, dominate Canadian politics and culture to some extent. And if we turn down the Keystone Pipeline, I certainly couldn't blame any Canadians who said, what is with you Americans? I mean, you'll take our beer and our comedians and actors, but you won't take our oil? What's wrong with our oil?
David, do they only want our comedians and not the rest of it?
You know, the question, I mean, why this shift in policy? And it's a good question. You know, we've had an energy policy in Canada for, you know, 30 years, which is based on market access and you know, market-driven energy policy, and it served us well. And, you know, sort of the government sets the enabling conditions to allow the sector to basically, you know, do what it does best, which is, you know, get stuff out of the ground and then get it to market. And the government sets the rules of the game, including environmental, social, you know, health and safety safeguards. What's happened, though, is, you know, there's been a shift, obviously, in the market, and you know, this exclusive market access has left us exposed in a whole series of markets. And again, not just oil and gas, but electricity. There are issues around California's cap and trade program and hydro coming out of BC, and basically, you know, tariffs being put on Canadian electricity, or threats of that ilk. So, you know, there's sort of a rethink going on that says, okay, we have to come up with a better way of doing business, and we have to, you know, push for market access, but we also have to demonstrate that, you know, we're getting our environmental house in order, and we're, you know, a global leader in environmental performance. So it's these twin objectives of, you know, development and environmental performance that are, you know, slowly the policymakers are realizing, oh yeah, we gotta, you know, this matters.
Well, you all know Dr. Charles Pascal, who was Dalton McGuinty's early childhood education advisor, who wrote in the Globe and Mail last fall, when it comes to post-secondary education, Ontario has been muddling through without a clear vision for years, marked by one-off ideas, informed more by facile and ego-driven lobbying than a learner and learning-centered vision. Post-secondary education in Ontario seems to be more of a non-system than ever, arguably the ad hocness monster of Canadian higher education. There's one thing I'll say for Charles Pascal: guy never takes a position on everything. Yeah. He's always on the fence. Okay, Julia, do you agree with what he has to say?
No.
Any of it?
No. Well, I mean, is there room for improvement in the system? Absolutely. But if you look at some of the research that Harvey's team has been pulling together in this province, we have the most productive system in the province. If you look at the number of students who are coming through our doors, the number of faculty who we have to teach them, and as I mentioned earlier, I think that there's been phenomenal transformation and will continue to be there. I think one of the things that the government has recently insisted be done is for each institution to publicly report in what's being referred to as a strategic mandate agreement, its vision for itself, the areas that it's going to focus on. I think that's a great step to have all of our, you know, everyone in the system go through that process, identify those priorities. So all I can say about that quote is wow.
Well, let me get George on this. And George, I know this quote refers to Ontario's post-secondary system, but, you know, you're part of Canada. You're in Alberta. Could we say the same for what's going on out west?
I would actually be comfortable, saying that there are, various factors at play, but there are certainly segments of the system globally, not just in Canada, that suffer from these challenges of more ego and politically driven than actual focus on learner-centered learning. I think part of the challenge is defining learner-centered learning, but this is one of the things that excites me about not just MOOC, because it's important to remember systems like Athabasca University. You know, we have 40,000 students. We do bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees online. And in those kinds of a setting, the experience of the learners can be quite exceptional. So we need to look at the evidence, the research that exists there, but by the same account, there's a lot of pressure to form the system by political or, in some cases, corporate desires.
Well, let's hit this right on the head, Cheryl. Athabasca doesn't have any buildings. You got lots of buildings. Are you therefore a better university than theirs?
We're a different university. So one of the things, and maybe the thing that Charles Pascal is trying to get at here, is that in the province of Ontario and in the country of Canada, we don't do much by way of differentiation. We don't say, here are some universities that fulfill this function. Here are some universities that fulfill a different function, and colleges play this role, and the University of Athabasca, which is a leader in online distance education, fills a different role. Rather, we are good Canadians, and we take our resources and we kind of spread them around evenly. And at some point, this country has to ask itself, do we want some number of universities that are truly excellent? So we saw recently in the last international rankings, a huge slippage amongst Canadian universities where almost all of them fell. Some tumbled down the ranking scales. So the Canadian universities did not perform well this year.
But you're basically saying at some point we can't be so egalitarian, we got to fish or cut bait.
That's right. We have to decide whether we're in the excellence game or whether we're in the mediocrity game in terms of our best universities. So other nations, Germany, England, Australia, they've put additional resources in their truly great universities, and they've measured greatness in various ways, and that's what Harvey's shop is engaged in doing. But we don't do that in Canada.
Well, you've done a report on this. Does your report, in your view, reflect the sentiment that Chuck Pascal was bringing forward?
Yes, it does.
So you think he's on the right track there?
Yeah, I would never be as categorical as Charles is inclined to be, but essentially has it right. So at the request of the government, we convened an expert panel to actually assess the strategic mandate agreement submissions that were made by the 44 Ontario post-secondary institutions. And I think they came out with a set of conclusions and a report, and these are experts in post-secondary education, that captures what Charles is saying. That A, we have to pursue, that we need more system-level planning in Ontario. What's going on now is a little bit ad hoc. And may I say, since I worked in both Ontario and Alberta, Alberta's a far more organized system than Ontario is. And the panel points that out.
A lot smaller, too.
It is smaller. And they also promote the idea, as Cheryl said, of that we have to start thinking about, in a much more systematic, active way, about system differentiation. We're not all the same.
Appreciate that, but I wonder, Robert, whether when people in the community college world hear that, what they're hearing is, basically, U of T gets all the money and everybody else can just go you-know-where.
Well, we can let the U15 fight out who's the best research university in the province. I was privileged to serve on the Council of Canadian Academies expert panel reviewing science and technology last year, and we're in the top 5 in the world in many areas of basic research. This is really good. Where we fall down as a country is in applied research and commercialization. We have one of the worst records in the world. Colleges are stepping into that and conducting applied research in concert with industry partners, which are doing 2 really important things. Number 1, they're helping industry to innovate, which is necessary in this country. And number 2, we're teaching students valuable innovation skills that they get in concert with their education. And this is an important point which I think Pascal is leading us to. He's making a very bold statement. He's creating gravitational pull to move us along a continuum. We don't have a student-centered system, as we've heard. We have an inside-out designed system. We need something from the outside in. We don't serve students well in this province by enabling them to transfer credits from college to college or college to university. And the reality is that students will be voting with their mouses, their mice, like they'll be clicking away to find the program and the credit and credential that is going to get them the skills that they need at a particular time in their life, in a particular context that they have.
The protests in Tahrir Square were full of promise. Change was coming to Egypt. But 2 years after Mubarak's fall, Egypt finds itself on unstable footing. Here now with his perspective on the current situation in Egypt, Mohammed Abul Ghar. He is the president of the Egyptian Social Democratic Party. And we welcome you not just to this TV studio, but to Canada as well.
Thank you.
Your party is the Social Democratic Party.
Yes.
And maybe you could just take a moment and tell us what it is you stand for.
We stand for private enterprise and reasonable taxation, control of the government on strategic things, and assuring good health and education programs to the Egyptian. And the end result is we want social justice for a country where the majority of the people is under the poverty line.
You are originally a doctor.
Yes,
and a university professor.
Yes, I am.
So how'd you end up in politics?
Well, I was always an activist against Mubarak regime for 20 years, and we started with a program within the university of opposing Mubarak and asking for academic freedom. And then I joined forces in the street. I was never organized in any political party. After the revolution, we were forced to form parties because now we have to fight for seats in the parliament and to change Egypt.
Do you have seats today?
Yes, now that there is no parliament. The parliament was dissolved, but we had 23 seats in the parliament which was dissolved. We ran in the elections when we were only 3 months old party.
Let me take you back to those very heady days 2 years ago. We all watched it, of course, on television over here. What do you most remember about those protests in Liberation Square?
Well, I remember very well that all the Egyptians went on the 25th of January demonstrating. Only the Muslim Brothers did not, and they announced that they are not going to join the rest of the Egyptians. And after the 25th, there were smaller demonstrations on 26th, 27th. On the 28th, which was a Friday, there were massive demonstrations, and that day the Muslim Brothers joined. But after the end of the 18 days, which myself and many others spent the whole time in the square until Mubarak resigned and left his post, now the whole revolution was stolen, to our belief, by only one party, although all Egyptians participated in this great revolution.
Egypt today, compared to 2 years ago, Egypt under Mubarak, better or worse?
The future will be better because we should come out of dictatorship. We should come out of military control, which lasted for almost 60 years. And Egypt should have civilians to run them. That is, so from this point, we are much better. But on the other hand, now we are in a great danger of changing a dictatorship to a fascistic regime, which could be even worse. There are some problems which now, during these 2 years, appeared major economic problems, major security problems, and very vague future. We want real democracy.
Let's find out just a little bit about you, because you're based in Montevideo, Uruguay, and you're the founder of a theory called biocognitive science. Would you help us understand a little more about what that means?
Yes, I had to actually invent the word because cognition looks at thinking. Biology, of course, looks at our biological processes, and I think that they're inseparable. Biocognition is really biology and cognition inseparably working together. But in addition to that, then there's a culture, the cultural component. So it's mind-body within a cultural context. We can't get away from the culture. So it was a science that brought together areas that were not communicating with each other. Psychoneuroimmunology, PNI, which looks at how thoughts and emotions affect the immune system and other systems. And then anthropology, that looks at cultural beliefs and so forth, but they weren't really sharing their discoveries and the things that they were contributing to the science. So it's really a convergence of these fields.
Let's go through this. How do you think culture influences the body?
Well, we were born to a culture. We have a medical culture, we have a religious culture. For example, people practicing Catholicism here in Toronto are not the same as people practicing it in Brazil. So you're born to a culture. In the United States, the attribution to a migraine is a vascular problem. If you go to UK, it's gastrointestinal. You go to France, and it's hepatic, liver. So the culture really shapes the belief systems, and belief systems then are shaping the biology.
Well, I gather one of the fastest growing demographics nowadays is centenarians.
Yes.
People who live to be 100. And you have studied these people. And I guess the conventional wisdom has always been they live a long time because they inherited good genes from their parents.
That's what I thought.
You've got some other ideas.
There are about 2,000 centenarians in Canada. Huh. And some in Saskatchewan, and I believe there maybe a couple in Toronto. But and 80,000 in the U.S. is the fastest growing segment of the population in the U.S. and other places. What I thought at first is I would study a centenarian, a 102-year-old person. I would ask him, what's the secret? And they would say, well, I have some rum before I go to sleep. And I thought, oh, it's got to be the quality of the rum. Somebody else would say, I have a cigar. What I found was that the ritual, independent of what they did, the ritual gave them an identity that had a psychoneuroimmunological value. And then as I continued to work with them all over the world, I found that genetics is really 35%. The rest is the cultural beliefs that they have. And what do we do culturally? We put people away at 65. Neuropsychologically, now we know that from 65 to 85, they have the most, what I would call human capital. Well-developed intellect, emotional maturity, tremendous knowledge of what they do, and yet they're put away. And they go somewhere to Florida to watch the sunset, and they live on the average 6 years because of the lack of meaning. The brain was made to have meaning and to have discovery, not to go watch the sunset. Medical advances. Where is that on your list of explanations for why people make it to 100? I think that the greatest contribution has been with the infections, the antibiotics, and for example, you have a fracture and you take care of the fracture. Systemic problems have not been really dealt very well with medicine. The billions of dollars have gone into it, and you have medications that help you live with the illness rather than cure the illness. So yes, I think infectious diseases, and I think, for example, orthopedic surgeons when you have fractures and so forth. But it's not really. In fact, and again, I'm not supporting this. I'm just reporting it. Several centenarians I've asked, "Do you go to the doctor?" No. Why? Well, to check up for what? There's nothing wrong with me. So I asked one, and so what does your doctor think about it? He said, I don't know, they're all dead. So the doctors are all dead. They've outlasted their doctors. Outlasted their doctors. Okay, that's pretty good. The retirement age, of course, in Canada, they just, I don't know what it's like in the Latin American countries that you hang out in, but they just upped it here, 65 to 67, because the government, I guess, recognizes that people are living longer and healthier. That's good. Ought not to therefore be able to tap into their pensions until later in life. Does retiring people at a certain age, whatever that might be, shorten their lifespan? I think it can. It depends on what they do. If they retire into nothingness, if they retire into what you would, it's counterintuitive because you would think, I've worked so hard all my life and now I'm just going to relax. Well, that relaxing is not good for you. You have to find something that has meaning, something that you're contributing your wisdom, all that knowledge you accumulated. How do you recycle that so that it can be assimilated by other people? Mentoring is a good way. There are many things that you can do. So it's 65. It's a cultural portal. There's no biology there that says that you need to retire. Centenarians that are cognitively intact have been intact beyond 65. I guess they picked 65 once upon a time when people lived to be 66 or 67, yeah, right? So they wouldn't have to pay too much Social Security because they wouldn't live up to it. Now that's completely different. Completely different. I don't think that there should be a middle age. For example, Ellen Langer, who you've interviewed, has talked about that, and the studies show that one study, people that look significantly younger and people that look significantly older, and when they factored out everything else, they found that the major contributing factor was that the people that look younger thought that middle age was later. Ah, interesting. So now I believe middle age starts at 90. No, but really, when does middle age start? It shouldn't. That's the thing. That's what I learned from centenarians. You ask them, what's middle age? And they say, that's foolish. You find out when you die. You don't know. So, because what you're doing is you're coding your system into saying, okay, if it's 45 then it's downhill. and you start giving attributions. No, I'm middle-aged now. I need to be thinking now about, I can't do this anymore because I'm middle-aged. I need to dress like middle-aged. I can't have a sports car because I'm middle-aged. So attributions change, and the admonitions put you into that portal, and you begin to age according to what the culture tells you, rather than your biology.
Can I ask you how old you are?
I don't tell my age.
You never do?
No, you don't.
Because people will pigeonhole you.
If let's say you say you're 80. Right. Oh, you look so good for 80, which means that you shouldn't look that good. Or you owe 80, so you lose either way. So what I tell people, I was born in the 20th century.
That's not narrowing it down very much.
No, and you should. And the
Thanks a lot.
centenarians tell me no. They say start telling your age after 100 and then lie about it. If you're 100, say you're 130.
Okay. And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety on our website, theagenda.tvo.org, on our iTunes channel, or on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.